Well, you might want to grab a pencil and paper to take some notes. Now, we know that everything that we're going to be talking about in this particular section today may not be something that you agree with, or maybe something that you've never heard before. So taking notes can really help as far as the discussion that will follow. So with that said, let's jump right in and welcome our very special guest this morning, Michael Marsh. Welcome.
Well, thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
Well, you know what? I have heard a rumor that you have been studying this book for 12 years. 12 years?
Yes, 12 years, maybe even a little longer. I find it is worthy of study.
Huh. And what is it that has compelled you to keep reading this book?
I find this book to be quite fascinating. Every aspect about it is fascinating.
Well, give me an example. Well, what would you find fascinating? I mean, let's be honest. For most people in this particular time that we're living in, which could be the end times, are saying that this is a very mysterious book. They leave it for, pastors or theologians. And there's even argument and debate on what we call the book. So really, when we back this train up a little bit, what do you call this? Revelations? What is the proper title here?
I like to use the introduction that is given in verse 1, the revelation.
Okay, the revelation.
The revelation of Jesus Christ that God gave him.
Huh. Okay, this puts a different spin on it, because for so many people, they've been thinking that this is like Jesus is standing on this stage, big velvet curtain is in front of him, and the Holy Spirit now is going to go ahead and raise the curtain, and ta-da, there is Jesus, and we're going to see a different facet of his personality or another characteristic. But you're saying that that's not the case?
Well, if you look at this first verse, and you look at it in many translations, some of them will say the revelation of Jesus Christ. Some of them will say the revelation about Jesus Christ. And so you have to ask yourself, what is being said here? And I believe if you read further into the verse, the revelation of Jesus shows that it's something that Jesus possesses that God gave him. And there's a reason. So I like to ask myself, who, what, where, when, why, and how is all this coming to pass?
That's really good. That helps set us on the right path for not only this discussion, but for looking at the entire book. Now, I know that you have another point that is really pertinent to this discussion.
And that point would be, in many Bibles or many versions, this is called the prologue. So you have to ask yourself, what is a prologue? What does that mean? We all sort of have an idea of what a prologue is, but if you go to Dictionary Online or dictionary.com or something, you will see that the prologue is the story before the main story that tells a story about the story you're going to read that you need to understand in order to grasp the concept for the final story.
So this is just a warm-up, sort of, to get us ready to really read what the book is about.
Correct.
Yeah?
It tells us what is coming, why we have it, and why it was given.
Okay. So reading on a little further here, it just says that God gave this to Jesus to show his servants, us, things that must shortly take place. Shortly?
Well, shortly, I guess, from God's point of view of time is not quite the same as ours.
No, of course.
God sits outside of time looking in, and we look at time linearly. Excuse
Linearly.
me. That's a tongue tire, but linearly. Past, present, and future.
Yeah, and it's not that way for God. So we're going, hurry up, God, and where have you been? I can just imagine the confusion of the early saints. You know, Jesus has departed, and now you've got most of the apostles are gone. And you've just got John, who's really in prison, essentially, on Patmos. Not a good place to be, if you read a little bit about that. And here is John sending this wonderful encouragement to these 7 churches.
Well, I also believe that it's God not wanting to be seen as the author of confusion. So,
Oh, yeah.
as you said, everybody else, the writers of the New Testament, have come and gone. Jesus was resurrected 60 years ago. And so the New Testament church that is now taking shape, there has to be some confusion about what is going on. What is the timing? And God gives this revelation to Jesus to clear up the misunderstanding. And Jesus gives it to John so that John can write it down for us.
Well, there's still confusion today.
There's still confusion.
Because have been people in the past that have said, oh, he's coming, and he didn't show up. And there are other people who said, well, did we miss it? And I think those earlier saints must have been thinking the same thing, looking around and going, where'd everybody go?
And the Apostle Paul wrote to the Thessalonian church that they had not missed it, that Jesus had not come, because there were certain things that needed to take place. Once again, trying to clear up misunderstandings and confusion.
Wow. Well, this is a lot to bite off
It is.
in the prologue, but that's okay, because you wanted to talk a little bit, when we talk about the Revelation, actually John uses the title Apocalypse, or Apocalypse, which is just another word for this prophetic vision or a dream, or it's a word that's always spoken to God's people to warn them of something or to encourage and comfort them. So when we're looking at this and we're seeing this, a word of prophecy and a testimony of Jesus Christ to all the things that he saw, what is going on here with this?
Well, I believe some of that will be cleared up in verse 5 in just a few minutes. But John records the testimony of Jesus. John also records Jesus as a faithful witness. So think of it as being in court. A witness gives a testimony. So Jesus has given a testimony about what is happening, and it's going to be recorded throughout this book. So God gives this to Jesus. Jesus gives it to John. And there is a specific promise that's given in verse 3. Blessed is the one who reads aloud the words of this prophecy. And I'll ask you, when is the last time somebody read this out loud at church to you? And then you're blessed to those who are here. Well, all of us who are listening now are hearing the words of this prophecy. And there is a keep what is written. So it's obvious it's to be understood.
Oh, I understand that now. That's, there's no other book like this, is there?
There is not.
There really isn't.
It is truly fascinating.
John is writing to these 7 churches, which we're going to get into, by the way, shortly. The 7 is such a big number, that number of completion, perfection. We're going to go into that in a bit. But grace to you, peace from him who is, was, and is to come, and from the 7 spirits who are before the throne, from Jesus Christ, the faithful witness.
Yes, so he's witnessed all of these events. He has given a testimony, like we said previously. He is giving a testimony about these events, and they can be trusted and believed.
Okay, well, we're going to take a little break right here. We will be right back on part 2. See you there.